Welcome to the Cloud Pod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, Google, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
and Peter.
Episode 47, recorded on November 13th, 2019. The Cloud Pod gets a savings plan. Hey, Jonathan, how's it going today?
Really good. It's been a really good week.
We are recording early, so we are with our trusty coffees. But we are short our beloved Peter. So we have a fantastic substitute named Matt Cohn. Matt, would you like to say hello and introduce yourself?
Hi guys, my name is Matthew Cohn. I'm with Foghorn Consulting. I'm the director of the East Coast. I primarily am a subject matter expert on Amazon and AWS. I've done work even helping Amazon update some of their certification tests to make them more relevant recently.
How is that? How is updating the certification test? Is it as baroque of a process as it feels when you're taking the test?
So I can tell you that they're trying to make it be more relevant, and make it less wordy and make things more concise. So part of the things that we're looking at when we write and review the questions is actually consolidating the questions down into just the meaningful parts. But that also means that every word in there becomes more important. So there's some pros and cons of that, but it also helps when people, when it's their second language. The other thing they're trying to do is make it more focused on what a minimum qualified candidate would actually know, and really consolidate it down to a little bit more scenario for the pro level exams, and for the associate level exams, a little bit more, just what is the technology and how to use it. So if you think one service versus multiple services for a pro level exam. Yeah,
that was one of my complaints with some of the pro certs in the past is, you get into the scenario and it's on, Java something, and you're like, well, I don't support a Java app day to day. I support a .NET app or a Python app or something else. And it was always like, well, I think I know how this works, but you're kind of in this gray area where you're like, well, I have to figure out how this scenario of performance latency can be optimized in a technology I don't actually really understand that doesn't have anything to do with AWS.
Yeah, are they going to solve the problem of like the tests not being up to date enough with the services?
Yeah, so they actually go through refreshing them, and that was one of the big pushes I just did with them, was actually getting the DevOps Pro questions refreshed. And then even to the point when we had questions that they couldn't release yet because it wasn't 6 months since the service has been released. So really getting the questions up to date and consistently rotating them through with newer questions is one of their goals right now. And I know that they've expanded their team, and their certification team, at least the people I've worked with, are all great and really trying to make this actually be more relevant than 3 years ago when I got my original DevOps Pro certification, when it was like, if you know OpsWorks, Beanstalk, or can memorize some stuff about Beanstalk in my case, and auto-scaling group, you could get a decent way through passing the test. At least now they're trying to pull in config and all the other tools that people actually use in more day-to-day, or more people use day-to-day.
Because I do know when I took my DevOps Pro, that was my big complaint too, was I was like, there's a lot of Beanstalk questions, and while I'm familiar with Beanstalk, I don't use it often because it's not really a deployment model that I think makes sense for DevOps. It makes sense for developers who are new to the cloud, but I don't think it's a good DevOps one. So it's always a little bit funny to me that it was in the DevOps cert. So glad to hear they're maybe making it a little bit more broader.
Yeah, it's getting a lot more interesting to sit down with everyone and do it. There's still a couple Beanstalk questions floating in there, but it's more about just how to use Beanstalk and things along those lines than diving into every other question is about Beanstalk.
Yeah, I remember when the one that gets into it is like, how do you do a deploy with Beanstalk? And it's like, the EB push command or something like that. And it was, but then they give you three of the same EB push answer with a different / command. You're like, well, all of them could be accurate. I don't know. I don't use the service day to day. So it was always fun. But enough of lamenting about the DevOps Pro cert, which I have to redo next year because mine's expiring.
Yeah, so do I. I'm not looking forward to it.
Oh, good. Well, I can maybe study with you, and that'll help me out. There we go. All right, cool. Well, let's move on to the show. So you probably don't know much about this one, Matt, because you weren't here last week, and the show just dropped for this week. But there was a big Halloween downtime for Google. They were down from Halloween night until pretty much the 2nd of November, where they had some issues. The RCA has been published, and so they say in the RCA that a performance regression in their networking control software caused the service to begin accumulating a backlog of requests. The backlog eventually became significant enough that the requests timed out, leaving some projects stuck in a state where further admin ops could not be applied, and it required manual intervention to clear the stuck projects and jobs. And so if you as you go through the article a bit more in depth, they start talking about a whole bunch of things around rate limiting and the way their system works in this control plane software. But overall, a little bit interesting issue and concern. It reminds me a lot of some of the former Amazon outages.
When I read through the article, they really start to dive down into different things, and which goes into the differentiation between Google and Amazon, where at least Amazon, since they regionalize everything, this would be isolated to a region. But this is one of the primitives that Amazon versus Google differentiate on, where Google has a global network where Amazon has regional networks. You have to be careful and make that decision going into it, where you do get some benefits of the global, but then not the local.
Understanding what your cloud's primitives are and how they think about availability and fault tolerance and resiliency is super critical to understanding how you need to design your services. And this is one of the big things that I stress anytime I talk to customers about Google or Azure, especially. Like, okay, you have to understand that they don't have some of the same primitives that Amazon does, and you have to think that through.
Do you think it's a fair RCA? Do you think they really got to the root cause? Or do you think there's something deeper there? Like, how did this bad bit of code get into production in the first place?
Yeah, they didn't really talk about the failures in their dev process that led to it. I think it's definitely the technical, reason why things backed up and things didn't work. But how that got to production, how they're preventing that from getting to production, I think that was a little light in the RCA.
Yeah, they had a whole bunch of stuff at the bottom of it, really talking more about how they're going to fix it going forward. But I thought, like you guys just said, that it's missing the what happened that caused it.
They talk about adding in continuous load testing, rate limiting traffic, sharding the global network further, which are all things that they should be doing anyways, and then automating the manual steps they had to do, which is good. But yeah, I wish there was a little bit more about, we rolled in this code that caused this function to slow down by 45%, or something like that. That would have been a helpful little bit of additional detail that they didn't include. And maybe they did for their internal customers. I don't have a support account with Google to be able to ask further questions, so I'm beholden to the public statements.
Yeah, I feel bad that they had to resolve every single case manually.
Yeah, that's not a good scenario whatsoever.
Yep.
It does answer some of the questions around why there was really no updates from Halloween night into the next morning, which I think the last time was maybe because they were all out trick-or-treating. But it sounds like actually the reality is that they were hoping the automation would recover on its own, and at some point they got to the point where they realized they had to manually address it, and that's when they really started updating the timeline. All right, moving on to new news. Capital One has replaced their security chief after their big data breach 4 months ago by Paige Thomas. The security chief will be moving into a new role as the SVP and special advisor dedicated to cybersecurity. And Mike Eason, who is the former CIO of commercial banking, has replaced Johnson as CISO temporarily while they search for a new permanent replacement. So I think that's a nice way of saying Michael Johnson's on his way out. We're putting him into an advisor role to do transition, but he's not in charge until we hire the new CISO. So I'm sure they are actively looking for a world-class CISO to help solve their problems at Capital One. And so good luck to them. I know, it's a tough situation, especially anytime you're in a scaled infrastructure of that size, that, someone getting blamed like this is sort of unfortunate because it's a breakdown of multiple processes.
Isn't that really the job of the CISO to be the fall person when things go wrong?
I'm sure it is. Having never been a CISO, it's still kind of anti to what we talk about in the culture of being blameless and understanding how your processes are failing and understanding those things. But yeah, you had to have a scapegoat, I guess, at some point.
There was just so many failures that were linked up to cause it that it always feels weird to me when they're like, well, this person is at fault, when really it was 10 or 20 other people that all caused one step from each person caused the failure.
Amazon is building a new robotics hub in Boston. This is our second hub. This will be a new $40 million office that cements the region as a tech giant's epicenter for robotics innovation. The new site will be 350,000 square feet in Westborough, Massachusetts. And the site will open in 2021 for about 200 people and complement their existing office in North Reading, Massachusetts. There's a statement here from Ty Brady, Amazon Robotics Chief Technologist. We're excited to grow our team in Massachusetts and take advantage of the talent and regional connectivity that Metro West offers. This will be a world-class facility where our teams can design, build, program, and ship our robots all under the same roof. This expansion will allow us to continue to innovate quickly and improve delivery speed for customers around the world. So that reads to me as this is going to be the new place where they're testing drones. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I would think so.
Because they don't need, they have those robots that move shelving around in their warehouses and, bring the pull, if this shelf has this product that's being pulled for shipment, it, grabs that thing and takes it to the person who packages it for them. That technology is relatively straightforward. I assume this is the next level. This 350,000 square feet is a big office or a big building to put some drones into and start testing different scenarios. So pretty exciting to see what they do with this.
Yeah, and I feel like they're a little bit behind because UPS and Walgreens have started doing tests of drone deliveries of packages and things now. So Amazon really hasn't done other than sort of like the press releases and the examples of drones dropping Amazon packages on people's driveway. I don't think they're actually productionized that yet.
I don't think they have either. But this is actually out in your neck of the woods, Matt. What do you think about this coming into your backyard?
Yeah, Amazon already has a large, I guess AWS technically has a large office in Seaport District of Boston, but those two locations, North Reading and Westboro, are pretty far apart. So just thinking about it logistically, those are 45 minutes to an hour on a good day in traffic between each other. So saying that they're going to complement each other and work together is going to be difficult logistically, unless if they're going to try to eventually consolidate, or they're going to really have them each focus on their own aspect of the technology that they're trying to improve.
Maybe they'll make self-flying things that can transport people between the offices. That'd be cool.
Or they'll run their own, own system that helps people travel between the two. Everyone gets their own little personal helicopter.
Yeah, that's right. Just hold on tight.
It's only 45 miles. Not a big deal.
Do you think if Amazon actually built their second headquarters in New York where they wanted to, would they have done this? Is this like a reaction to not building their second HQ like they wanted?
The reality is that the whole headquarter 2 thing was kind of a boondoggle anyways. They really have several offices already around the country that are different focuses and different needs. And so I think, the idea of headquarters 2 was to, potentially build a much larger campus, but they still already have campuses in those locations. So it was a bit of a weird thing anyways.
I suppose they actually have to build the offices where the talent is, and there's plenty of talent in Boston.
Boston has tons of universities and whatnot are all around here, so getting people that with high education really, or that are very specific in technology and programming and all these things is not difficult for them to do. I think that Boston probably lost out on the Amazon 2 headquarters probably due to just cost. It's not that much cheaper than the Bay Area living here. So,
hey everyone, Jonathan here. I just wanted to take a minute to thank the cloud consulting gurus at Foghorn for helping make the Cloud Pod possible. These folks truly get it. Cloud consulting experts since 2008, they are premier tier partners with AWS, Google Cloud Platform Silver, and Microsoft Azure partners. From multi-cloud to containers to moving full production workloads to the cloud under the tightest compliance, Foghorn's team of full-stack cloud engineers have been there, done that, gotten the t-shirt, and are ready to share their experience with you. If you're in the market for some talent to supplement your team, visit www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. Foghorn, the promise of cloud delivered.
Well, moving on, IBM, if you guys remember from a few months back, announced that they were going to be the number one player in the next generation of cloud. And, what they saw as what Azure and Google and Amazon was doing was just, that was the beginning of cloud, but they were going to own the next phase. And so their first big announcement in this space is that they have partnered with Bank of America to build the first differentiated financial services cloud. This partnership is leveraging the financial giant's deep industry knowledge and hosting highly regulated workloads to develop the process framework of a new financial services cloud. They do say it will be the first financial services-ready public cloud, which I take issue with for a lot of reasons we'll talk about here in a minute. And they have a desire to build a framework that makes it easier for financial services companies to onboard to public cloud by automatically enforcing the right controls and best practices for compliance, security, risk management, and data protection. IBM is also hoping to attract SaaS vendors who like to sell to fintech-compliant companies and help them ease the concerns of companies like Bank of America or others that use this cloud by saying, well, you're on the IBM Financial Services Cloud. IBM is currently the number 7 cloud provider, and so they have a long way to go to get to that number 1 spot.
If I was a financial organization, I would definitely trust the more established providers like Amazon and Google over a startup. Although I suppose being sort of aligned with Bank of America, you kind of trust that they know what to build in the first place. But I don't know, it's a bit weird.
I worry that you end up building a solution that meets Bank of America's concerns, which may not be the general industry concerns. And so where does that line get drawn, right? Like, is this purely a Bank of America interpretation of how they want to do it, or is this how the fintech services in the world want to do it? And are you kind of going too far towards one direction or one opinion that other companies would find overly restrictive? And so that's an interesting part of it, especially when you're talking about bringing SaaS companies into this as well, who are not necessarily under the same regulations that a company like Bank of America is. I could see there being a conflict or issues with a feeling that this is too restrictive almost. It's almost like the early days of Google App Engine, where they had all these very draconian rules that all make sense for the Google website, but when you apply them to different business use cases, they end up becoming very limiting very quickly.
It's really good that you have these two large companies, but to me, like going with IBM, who is a number 7 cloud provider, it's kind of like in the olden days of going to get Cisco hardware. Nobody gets fired for buying Cisco hardware and having a failure. People still trust the IBM name out there, and it still does hold water. So maybe this solution was kind of brought about by, that same old philosophy of, let's go with the IBM cloud because it's a name that people trust and know, and we're not going to get fired for it, but not really looking at all the underlying technologies that run it and how it's going. Because to me, Bank of America going with a number 7 cloud provider with the scale and everything that Bank of America has, even if they did get IBM to really focus on all the controls and compliance and everything else that a fintech company needs, really means that they're limiting themselves on everything else that they can do. And they're not getting the advantage of scale that Amazon or Google or Microsoft all would provide them.
I think the days of IBM is a safe bet that you won't get fired for have long ended now. I mean, even 10 years ago when I was last buying IBM hardware, when I would go to industry events that IBM was sponsoring and look around the room at the other participants in the thing, they were all nearing retirement age. They were all very stuffy companies that are not very modern thinkers. And so I'm hoping that IBM or Oracle, no one gets fired for buying those type of things is sort of ending. But you never know. It could be more dominant than I realized in some enterprises, that this is a really great play. I think it makes sense to try to partner with a company like IBM from Bank of America's perspective. I imagine if they tried to do the same thing with Azure or AWS or Google, they would have difficulty getting their opinions to become priority for them, because they're looking at a much larger customer base and a much larger concern of needs and compliance frameworks than this IBM thing, which is like, they're probably thinking, well, if we can get this to be right for financial services, we can use this as a jumping off point into healthcare and into other things where they could do the same thing with a big marquee customer. So I see why IBM did it. I'm a little less sure that Bank of America made the right call here, but they also were recently touting the fact that they built their own cloud internally at Bank of America and how it saved them, $3 billion globally by building their own cloud and not using AWS or Azure. So it's overall just a really interesting perspective in general.
I wonder if the decision has to do with some of the differentiating factor that IBM does have over other providers. I mean, they are doing a lot of research in quantum computing. They've always been kind of like leaders in encryption technology and that kind of stuff. So maybe there's a good reason why Bank of America partnered with them. Yet to be revealed.
Yeah, we will see. We'll keep an eye on it for sure.
I'm also wondering how large of a segment of their business is going into the IBM cloud. Because if you think about even past reInvents, where I don't remember the company specifically, but I feel like 1 year you'll see company X say is on stage with AWS at their keynote during reInvent, and then the next year they're on stage, or 2 years later they're on stage with Google or Microsoft saying, well, this is the cloud we're going with. So I really also wonder how much of the business is actually going to the IBM cloud versus other clouds.
That's a good point. I often wonder that same thing when we have presentations from salespeople and they bring out the the corporate logos on their reference slide, and I think, well, how much business, which part of that that company is actually using your tool? The scope is very important. So yeah, that's a very good point.
All right, moving on to AWS news. Jeff Barr is celebrating 15 years of blogging. That milestone was achieved on November 11th, which is the 15th anniversary of his first blog post for AWS. The blog post goes on to tell about his career from the early days at Microsoft, his joining Amazon, being involved in the early narrative reviews for AWS in Andy's living room, and then also the first blog post and how they wrote it on TypePad at the time using a free coupon for 1,000 days free, and then several links to some of the early blog posts, including SQS, S3, EC2, EBS, which is a little bit of nostalgia for me reading through some of those, because I remember when they first came out many, many years ago. And Jeff is now has, as of this 15th year post, had 3,100 posts under his belt, and many more to come, as well as I've seen already like 5 posts this week. So he's at 3,105, I think, for this week alone. So he's still actively blogging like crazy, and he has been a great resource for all of us here in the cloud community for a very long time. So congratulations, Jeff, and the team and his blogging team now, which is much bigger than just Jeff, as he goes into detail in the blog post as well.
He's a great person. I met him a couple times at Reinvent and had some great conversations with him, and he's always very insightful. I mean, granted, he can't share everything that I'm sure he knows of what's happening internal to Amazon, but even just he's still up on his tech. He's still very, he's extremely smart, and just having a conversation with somebody like that is always pleasurable.
Yeah, we had lunch with him last year, didn't we, at Reinvent, after we won the hackathon.
Yep. And I think that they're supposed to be doing blog posts about that in the next couple of weeks for us.
Excellent.
As they actually release our solution. So should be some fun, Jonathan.
That's scary.
We should get some of you guys onto one of our mini shows to talk about how to attack a hackathon.
That's a good idea.
All right, moving on to the big news of the week. So as you guys know, Amazon has a concept called RIs, which were released over a decade ago to vex your CFO, drive you crazy in trying to figure out how to buy them, and allow you to easily save or waste millions of dollars. And since Amazon has released them, customers have saved over $1 billion using RIs, or at least they think they have. And over the years, they have added features like regional benefits, convertible RIs, and instance flexibility, resulting in discounts up to 72% on some workloads, particularly for Linux, not Windows. But it does require a large amount of Excel work, or machine learning work, if you will, and has many other drawbacks. And is really not staying up to date with what things like Google's doing and Azure's doing. And to solve these shortcomings, AWS is launching the new savings plan feature. This is a new flexible discount model that provides you with the same discounts as RIs in exchange for a commitment to use a specific amount of compute power over a 1-year or 3-year period. When you commit to a specific amount of compute usage per hour, all usage up to that amount will be covered by the savings plan, and anything past it will be billed at the on-demand rate. So that's pretty interesting. What do you guys think about that?
It doesn't reserve the capacity for you, though, right? So
it does not reserve the capacity, so it is not a BCP DR solution for you.
Yeah.
So most of the RIs don't actually reserve the capacity. So if you look at any of the flexible ones or the convertible ones, they're not actually reserved. The only way to get true reserved, I think, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong on this, is if you actually buy it for the specific AZ, you buy the original Rs that were released 9-10 years ago at this point.
Well, they also have a capacity reservation you can do now, which they introduced about 6 months ago. So instead of doing the RI, you just reserve the capacity. That's how people are doing it mostly now. So these come in 2 flavors. There's the Compute Savings Plan, which provides the most flexibility and helps reduce your costs up to 66%, just like the convertible RIs today. The plan automatically applies to any EC2 instance regardless of region, instance family, OS, or tenancy, including those that are part of EMR, ECS or EKS, and or launched by Fargate. That is a pretty nice change, not having to worry about instance types or compute type or OS. Simplifies this dramatically for you, but you do get a little bit less discount due to that. The other option is the EC2 Instance Savings Plan, which applies to a specific instance family within a region and provides the largest discounts, up to 72%, just like a standard RI. And this covers usage of different sizes of the same instance type, so your C5 4x large or your C5 large in a given region. And you can even switch between Windows to Linux with this model without having to make any changes to your savings plan. So that's a pretty nice change there, and much more flexible version of the traditional RI. You can buy these new savings plans via the Cost Explorer and click on Savings Plan, which includes several menus including Overviews, Inventory, Recommendations, purchase utilization reports, and coverage reports. And savings plans are available worldwide today, except for in China. So you note here, if you have built a lot of machine learning and you have a really great system for buying the legacy RIs, those are still supported. You can still buy the old-fashioned RIs if you have that down to a science or a more predictable workload, unlike most companies.
So really it's just a bulk discount plan.
Yeah, so basically I'm committing to $100,000 a month, and so everything up to that $100,000 a month that's in the compute family will basically be discounted, and then if I go to the $100,000 to $200,000 would be on-demand pricing at that point. But yeah, it's much more flexible versus I need 100 C5 larges and 100 M4 2x large in this region, and the availability zone and all the things that are really a big detriment to making RIs easy and efficient. That's all been kind of removed, which is super nice.
So what happens if you don't spend the 100,000? They still bill you the 100,000.
Yeah, it's just like a normal RI.
Yeah. So really, it's just.
It gives you recommendations in the wizard. So it does give you like, hey, here's what you're spending on an hourly compute basis. And so let's say it's $100 an hour you're spending on compute across all of your services. It may only recommend you spend $80 for, committed, and leave that $20 to be uncommitted. So it does try to not recommend that you commit to all of it, just because it knows that it's a risk. But yeah, you have options.
Yeah, I guess you could choose whatever percentage you wanted for the savings plan, and then use Spot for the rest.
Yeah, you can definitely do that. And I think the other nice thing you can do is, say you are wasting money, the ability to I'm on an M4 X large, I can move to an M5 2X large, use that additional savings that I'm not using already, and I get a better instance class out of it. So there are some advantages. So if you do make those mistakes, you can now recover much easier than before, where I'm looking at a bunch of M3 instances I reserved 3 years ago that I don't use anymore.
Yeah, we need to fix that.
And this nicely falls in line with what they released a few weeks ago and converted everyone over to, which is not CPU or instance type based limits, but the vCPU limit in your account. So they're kind of trying to move everything in parallel, which is nice. Then one thing move, and a year and a half later, somebody figured out that we should also move RIs to the same model. It seems like there at least was a more cohesive thought process across the migrating to the vCPU limits in your account, and now the vCPU RIs and all these things.
Yeah, I think the key there is that they're going to move into a world where they don't really have instance family sizing, right? T-shirt sizing anymore. They have to solve this problem, because if they want to get to the point where Google has the ability to add, I want 4 CPUs, or I want 6 CPUs, and I want 20 gigs of memory, or I want 60 gigs of memory. You can do it all in the same server. You don't have to change from X large to a 4X large to get that. You can get exactly what you need when you need it. And if that's their long-term goal, is to move more towards that model, I think this is a good way to get there. Which they wouldn't have been able to support in the old RI model. It would have actually been a big problem for them. So I think this is all preparation for things that are either going to come at Reinvent this year, or things they're working on for future years here in the next couple of years to be more competitive with Azure and Google on some of these more dynamic instance types.
Yeah, I definitely look forward to like an a la carte type thing where you just pick what you want in terms of hardware from a family, and then just pay for what you use.
Yeah, definitely. But I do look forward to explaining this to my future CFOs and say, I want you to commit to a savings plan. And they're like, what, a 401k? No. I don't necessarily like the naming of this particular thing, but it's all right.
A savings plan that requires that you spend a certain amount of money a month is, I don't know, it doesn't sound like all that much of a savings plan. But
yeah, the really weird part is that they were able to, it makes sense they could do it now, the Windows versus Linux, it's not interchangeable in both of these offerings, because that's always a big headache, is these great performance numbers. They say 72% discount, for example. You couldn't actually get that on Windows boxes because of the way the licensing worked with Microsoft and all that. So you always got less savings on a Windows box versus Linux. So it's nice to see that no matter what you're spending, you're going to save some money, which is great. I do wish they would just go to the next level, which is the Google model, where if the instance is up for more than X number of hours per month, you just automatically get it discounted. But apparently that's a road too far at this point. All right, moving on to another great feature for CloudWatch. So cross-account and cross-region dashboards are now available to you in CloudWatch. These dashboards enable customers to create high-level ops dashboards and utilize one-click drill downs into more specific dashboards in different accounts without having to log in and out of different accounts or switch regions. Being able to visualize, aggregate, and summarize performance and operational data across accounts and regions helps reduce friction and thus assists in reducing time to resolution. This is also integrated into AWS organizations, and so you can designate certain accounts as monitoring accounts and which accounts they can see data from, and this can all be handled at the organizational level to simplify your life. So this is there's a bunch of SRE teams out there, I'm sure, who are super duper happy about this new capability and feature to get that single pane of glass without having to buy something like SignalFx or what's the Datadog guys, or any of those other tools that do that aggregation for you. You can now do it directly in CloudWatch.
Yeah, this is really good. I'm really looking forward to this because you deploy an application in multiple regions for HA. You still want to have a whole view of the app, even though it's deployed in separate regions. So it's about time.
Yeah, I look forward to this eventually being extended out to being able to alert at this level as well. Not just view them, but be able to actually alert and take actions all from centralized accounts. And I can see how that can get there in the next few months to really help simplify some of this dashboarding and single pane of glass type actions you want for SRE or even a NOC team at the end of the day.
Yeah, I had one customer about 2 years ago that decided to do one single account for production where, it was a completely hands-off account. So it was a decent practice, but part of the reason was they wanted the alerting in one central place and they didn't want to have to log into 10 different application accounts to see their dashboards and everything. So this would have solved the problem. So maybe they'll end up going through a re-architectural project in the next couple months.
Excellent.
I'd be curious to see how they charge for this too, because in the problem you have with SignalFx or Datadog or Wavefront or any of those solutions is that you end up paying a pretty high API penalty for pulling the metrics out of CloudWatch. And I wonder if this will hit those same APIs, and so we build the same way. That'd be the only detriment to this type of service. But I guess not paying for SignalFx and paying for the API is better than, just paying for the API would be a better scenario on that. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I'm curious to see a little more in action, how it looks like from the billing perspective. But super, super helpful feature in general.
Did it say if they actually kind of aggregated the data in one region, kind of in the background, and then it's just a view, like? When you log into the console, is it just a view of the data they've already aggregated, or are they literally pulling the data from the other region, like as you pull up the dashboard?
I did not see it, dictate how that aggregation is done. It does say it does aggregate and summarize the data, but I don't know if that happens in the account and then the aggregation is sent up, or if they actually send the raw data to the monitoring account. I don't know.
I was just kind of wondering what would happen if there was a regional failure. Does it completely break the dashboard, or does it just show you the data from the region that's still up?
Well, I mean, I'm assuming that this is based in US East 1, so like all these kind of global services sort of have that US East 1 problem to them. But I don't know. That's a good question too. Maybe we can get some follow up on that. If you have this, if the monitoring account creates this roll up dashboard in West, and you have services in East, West, and Europe, what does that look like in the event of an East failure? I mean, I'm sure we could just set that up tomorrow, and it'll be down in the next week, Jonathan. So we'll figure it out.
Yeah. I'll do a follow up item.
Amazon is trying really hard right now to convince everyone that they are a big open source advocate and they're doing the right things by open source. And so they've written a blog post called An Outsider's Inside View on Open Source AWS. And this is a blog post detailing all the contributions between AWS and FreeBSD, including Amazon hero Dr. Colin Percival, who's a long-standing FreeBSD developer, perhaps best known for FreeBSD Update and PortSnap, as well as the founder of TarSnap, which is billed as the online backups for the truly paranoid. Colin has spent the last decade building and maintaining the FreeBSD AMIs for AWS, and this details how his open source collaboration with AWS has gone from working with scattered AWS employees to coordinated corporate support across the board. So it's an interesting article. I won't get into too many of the details here. If you're interested, do follow this in our show notes. But he talks about the different aspects of FreeBSD and his passion for FreeBSD as a product, and how that then turns into his contributions with AWS, and how AWS has helped contributing back to FreeBSD, which is great. This is all very much an image management situation they're trying to do for all things open source, with also a very large push at AWS Reinvent this year for open source, etc. But it's a good article.
We use FreeBSD quite a lot over the years, mostly for network appliance type implementations, but they don't really seem to be particularly relevant right now. So I kind of get the feeling AWS sort of trawled through the open source community just to find somebody they could write a post about.
Well, I mean, they're definitely not going to be asking Elasticsearch to do a post with them right now.
Yeah, burning those bridges on a weekly basis. MongoDB.
AWS has a new feature to allow automated draining for Spot instances nodes on Kubernetes. This is a new node termination handler to make it easy for customers to take advantage of the cost savings and performance boosts offered by EC2 Spot instances in their Kubernetes cluster. With graceful handling EC2 Spot instance, the node handler provides a connection between termination requests from AWS infrastructure to Kubernetes nodes, allowing them to drain and terminate in a healthy way versus just turning them off as they do today. The termination handler uses the Kubernetes API to initiate the drain and coordinate actions on the node that is targeted for termination. You can also use the handler to simulate Spot termination requests. You can actually test this before the termination event happens and see that your app works and supports this properly. And the project is open source and supported by AWS. And you can run this on any Kubernetes cluster running on either AWS, on your own Minikube type deployment, or including EKS. So very flexible. I assume this uses some very specific APIs through the metadata service that you can leverage for this capability.
I think it's great that they're adding Spot instances and support and automatic connection or application draining in this case, but for all the different services. But at that point, I feel like as more and more people use Spot, I'm wondering if that's slowly raise the price, and if that's their end goal is, if we add Spot to more and more things like the SageMaker they've done recently and a few of the other ones, that they're trying to get the amazing savings that people are getting at Spot, but trying to raise that price so they get paid a little bit more, and that differentiation between Spot and on-demand, that margin becomes less.
Yeah, that's definitely going to happen as more people use it.
Amazon QuickSight has gone mobile, launching cross-source joins and more. Amazon QuickSight has announced the release of QuickSight Mobile for iOS and Android. The app enables you to securely get insights from your data from anywhere, browse favorites, and interact with your dashboards interactively. QuickSight also now supports joining across different data sources, which allows you to connect to multiple data sources and join data across these sources in the QuickSight console directly, as well as the new features for relative data filters to filter by any arbitrary number of periods. So this is a nice enhancement to QuickSight, and I really put it here in the show notes because I want to talk about how much investment they're doing in QuickSight. So this is the 6th major update to QuickSight in the last 3.5 months. So it's very clear that Amazon is really trying to make this a big-time competitor to services like Tableau, which were recently acquired by Salesforce. So I think this is really interesting to see what they're doing here. I expect there to be some big announcements at this reInvent as well.
I guess it's kind of an enabler for remote SRE or DevOps people as well. Now they can have dashboards on your phone showing you the states of your services. So it's perhaps they're also trying to push back into the sort of DevOps tooling market.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways they can go with QuickSight, combined with the CloudWatch dashboards we just talked about, and this service capability. I think you can see how this really helps open up a bunch of different avenues for them to start providing insights and reporting for executive consumption as well as for your mobile device. Hey, how many people have used our website today? And you just pull it right up on your mobile app. I think that's an overall nice enhancement that is well needed. Yeah,
and it's really, I was really happy to see that it supported IDP or federated login out of the box, which is pretty cool.
That's great. I did download the app on my phone, so I will let you know if I create something that I can actually leverage on it. I will let you know.
Excellent. We should do a CloudPod stats dashboard.
That's exactly what I was going to work on. So, do you see a lot of need for this out in the market, Matt?
I feel like I don't really see that many customers that go into this. I have a couple customers that use Tableau for their dashboarding. But one of the problems I know a couple of my customers have had, because I've dealt with a bunch of HIPAA and high trust compliance, is Tableau would not for a while ago. Maybe this might be outdated, but they would not sign a BAA, which meant you couldn't run any PHI data through it. So a lot of companies had to have some sort of process to actually remove all the PII from it before they actually put it into their dashboarding system to actually give their business analysts and everything like that more information. Personally, I feel like either way, you should remove the PII before you give your business analysts a lot of that stuff, because there's probably not a need for them to know that Matthew Cohn has X, Y, and Z, and this is his social and all of the other information. But that was a problem for a couple of customers, and I know a couple of customers struggled to make that decision to go with one tool over another. And if QuickSight, which I don't know offhand, comes under the BAA of Amazon, that in theory could help them open that whole healthcare market.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about the healthcare aspect of it for the BAA. But yeah, that's definitely an interesting idea that they could do some interesting things to kind of go after Tableau. I think the biggest problem I see in this is that they don't have the hearts and minds of BI people, right? And so how do they get the message of QuickSight as an awesome tool out to those people who make those business decisions? Because that's not technically a technical decision about which tool you use for this a lot of times. It's really, what does the BI team use, what do they prefer, and how do they want to deploy that to their executive team for their needs? And so I think it's a bit of a marketing problem right now, is they don't have a good message on this, and they don't have a way to really tell people it exists other than through the Cloud Pod and their press releases. I think they need to really kind of drive a much bigger marketing story around this.
And I just did check, QuickSight is under the BAA, so in theory you could just let whatever database you want to point QuickSight at, you could just let it point to there, and you don't have to worry about compliance for healthcare, at least.
Oh, that's nice. That's great to know. PostgreSQL 12 is now available in Amazon RDS database preview environment. The Postgres 12 capability includes support for 51 extensions, including PostGIS 3.0, and adds support for the wall to JSON capability and the decoder raw plugin for logical decoding. Postgres 12 was released on October 3rd, which means AWS has only delivered this a month and a half after it was generally available, which is much better than they did with Postgres 11. So hopefully this is a sign to come of much better adoption of these features in production capabilities for the new versions of Postgres. This is, of course, only in the RDS preview environment, which is not production ready, so hopefully it becomes production capable at reInvent or very soon. And so for those of you who are not familiar with the preview environment instances are retained for a maximum period of 60 days and are automatically deleted after the retention period. RDS snapshots are created in the preview environments only and cannot be applied to the non-preview mode databases. So if you are in a preview environment and you want to move that to production when it's not, you have to do a PG dump and PG load process to move that data. So do keep that in mind if you're using the preview environment. It is not for production use. It is purely a preview. You're looking for your feedback and defects that you might identify.
The clue is in the name, right?
It is, but it doesn't stop people from sometimes using things in production that they shouldn't.
Yeah, it's just...
Doesn't Amazon have a feature where you can upgrade the snapshot or something to a newer version of the database? It's a little bit cleaner, so I wonder if they're going to allow you to do that with your, let's say, 12.1 gets released, if you can take your previous snapshot and upgrade it out of it, or if you have to do the dump, they're just going to say the snapshot's not at all relevant.
Well, if you're using the mainline RDS, like Postgres 11, for example, and you want to move to Postgres 12, you can use that snapshot capability. That's totally fine. Okay. It's that you can't take a preview snapshot and move a preview snapshot to production. That's what they're saying they can't do, even the snapshots.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So if you're worried about being abandoned on Postgres 11, that won't be the case. But just don't put your production system onto the preview environment. You'll be fine.
Yeah, I wonder if the what the hell am I thinking? Redshift uses Postgres, doesn't it? Under the covers.
No, Redshift is its own thing.
Is it? I thought they were going to migrate away from its own thing to whatever.
I mean, maybe. I'm not aware if that's actually happened or not. But fundamentally, it was Redshift was technology that they had licensed from another company to do columnar database, and then that company went belly up. And so I don't know if Amazon somehow bought the code as that company went belly up, or what, and so they own that, or if they said at that point they're going to start moving to something else for columnar. But I don't think they're using Postgres for the columnar capability yet.
Okay.
But I could be completely wrong on that, because I don't use Redshift that often, and so if someone can tell me otherwise, I'd love that feedback.
I'm kind of curious, because Postgres 12 is it's super good performance, and that is some really cool features like reindexing online without interrupting any existing running queries. And the optimizations for the logging is going to be really good now, because the log replication to other regions is kind of crappy with Postgres right now. But if once they've optimized the log content, we can improve our sort of RPO in case of failure.
Very interesting. They did add column oriented storage in 9.4, so it's possible they have rolled that forward. I just don't know, John.
I don't know.
So we'll need to research. We'll get back to you, happy listeners. All right, well, that's it for the AWS news. But as we're heading into Reinvent, I did promise last week that we would start providing some tips and tricks for Reinvent. So this time we're going to talk about logistics and hotels and keynotes. So Matt, you've been to Reinvent several times, I know. This will be my 5th year, I think. And Jonathan, I think this is your 3rd, correct?
4th.
Fourth time. So there you go. So we are not exactly experts, but we are expert enough to provide some tips for you, for those of you who are going to the event this year for the first time, or even those who have been many times. Maybe this will help you as well. So let's start with hotel selection. What do you guys feel about hotels, especially knowing that there is a very large campus between the MGM Grand all the way to the Venetian? That is the entire strip of Las Vegas, with many, many hotel venues in between, including the Aria, the Mandalay Bay, the Mirage, and the Treasure Island. All those hotels in the middle. What do you guys think about hotel picking?
When Reinvent was just in the one venue in the Sands, it made sense to stay in the Venetian or Treasure Island close to the conference center. But now there are sessions distributed all down the strip. I think it's less important where you stay. And personally, I like staying off the strip and getting away from the noise and the busyness, and find an Airbnb or something.
Yeah, we normally stay, I think, at the Aria, mainly because, last year, or at least the year before, they were the place that was, in theory, more container focused, which is where a lot of the work that I end up doing falls into place. So we ended up staying there, which helped for some of the sessions. But honestly, at this point, it's really just, it doesn't matter. You're going to end up walking between places or taking the shuttles, which, it ends up being a wash at that point.
Yeah, I think the Sands was definitely the place to be. It is still somewhat the epicenter of all things Reinvent, even though it's on one end of the strip. So, you're never wrong for picking the Venetian or the Palazzo Hotel, which is the connected hotels to the Sands Convention Center space. But I definitely think picking something more middle of the road like the Aria, I think gets you kind of the best of both worlds, where you're central to the main activities, and you can kind of get moved around pretty quickly. But I agree with Jonathan. I think this being my 5th year, this will be my 3rd year doing an Airbnb off the strip. Being able to detox from the mess of the strip every night and be able to have your own food and your own kitchen and all that kind of stuff is super, super refreshing, and it definitely makes the drag of being there for a full week less impactful. So that is my expert pro tip. If your company allows you to expense Airbnb hotels, it is a really great way to do it. And if you have coworkers like Jonathan and I are staying with Ryan, you can actually save quite a bit of money on your hotel stay. Basically the cost of one hotel room at the Venetian is what it costs for the 3 of us to stay at a really nicely set up Airbnb. So definitely a pro tip for those of you out there who are open to doing something like an Airbnb, or have friends that don't mind sharing an Airbnb. You can save a lot of money in that model.
Yeah, and as far as travel goes, I thought the busing between venues was actually pretty good last year. The traffic, though, in Vegas, it's faster to walk if you can walk, for sure.
Yeah, so they did fix the big problem of 2017, which was that the bus service was awful in 2017, and they did fix that for 2018. So I expect that to be the same this year. The bus service will be pretty good. If you don't mind walking is always great, especially considering how much sitting you do at these type of events. The walking is great, but it is a bit, they don't look very far on the hotel maps or even on the campus map, but they are a bit of a walk. So if you're at the Sands, which is in the very back of the Venetian Palazzo, and you're trying to get to something at the Bellagio, for example, that is probably almost a half-mile walk to a mile. Sorry, about a mile and a half, actually. I think about it, because of the Bellagio, it's in the back of the hotel as well. And across many streets and things like that over sky bridges, but it's quite a bit of walking at the end of the day, so just keep that in mind. If you don't want to do the buses, using Lyft or Uber is a great option. That's one of my go-tos, as well as Oracle typically has their Teslas driving around. Yeah, free Tesla rides. If you can tweet them and tell them when you want to go someplace, they will actually pick you up and drive you and give you an Oracle ad on your way between 2 venues. But that's a nice option too. That's free if you can get onto their list. But the Lyft and Uber is nice, but do be aware that the hotels sometimes put the Uber and Lyft stands in the parking garages or in the front of the hotel away from where the venues are, so do keep that in mind. Do follow the signs through the venues to the different Uber and Lyft pickup areas of the different hotels. I would not recommend renting a car. Parking is not free at most hotels in Vegas nowadays, and dealing with a car and the traffic and all that and the parking, that is a very inconvenient option, and I really don't recommend that one. What do you guys think about cars?
That sounds like the world's worst choice in Vegas.
Indeed. And the other option for some people, especially if you're staying at the MGM Grand, is the monorail system. The monorail will be able to take you between the MGM and Harrah's, which is outside the Venetian. So you still have a bit of a hike from where the Harrah's monorail station is into the Venetian. But anything that's on basically the east side of the strip is pretty much accessible via the monorail system. Which is pretty simple to use. And a week-long pass is not very expensive at all, so definitely check that out if you're open to the monorail and a walk or some hybrid of that. That is not a bad option as well.
Honestly, normally when I'm there, I probably walk 4 to 6 miles a day, if not more, because I just wake up and it's nice to get some fresh air, get some sunlight, versus being inside the casinos all day with the stuffy air that is just recirculated. So I kind of enjoy that walk in the morning, at least from wherever I'm staying to wherever the first place I'm going. And by the end of the day, sometimes even that walk home after the pub crawl or any of the other events, it's a nice refresher to do.
Other item here for this week is the keynotes. So all the keynotes this year are going to be at the Venetian. Monday Night Live with Peter DeSantis, who's the VP of AWS Global Infrastructure and Customer Support. I've actually never made it to Monday Night Live. I don't know about you guys. Then Andy Jassy's this year is going to be on Tuesday, which has normally been reserved for the Global Partner Summit keynote, but that's been moved to Wednesday this year if you're a partner. And then Dr. Werner Vogels, of course, will be closing out the event on Thursday, all at the Venetian Hall A. Hall A is not big enough to support all attendees. It only can handle, I believe, around 1,500 to 2,000, or no, first 1,000 guests. We'll get apparently special swag. But beyond that, it's about maybe 5,000 people in that venue, knowing that Reinvent is probably around like 25,000 people. If you would like to be at the keynote, make sure you get there early to get a seat. If you don't get there early, they will send you to an overflow room, where you can watch it on video. My preference these days is just to watch it from my Airbnb on the TV and just enjoy it from the quietness while I'm eating a nice breakfast on my own, and then head to the craziness of the event. Any other tips for keynotes?
Yeah, one of my good pro tips is if you have to be somewhere right after and you have any AWS certifications, or go get the Cloud Practitioner or any of those at this point, is go sit in the certification lounge. In the last couple of years, they always gave everyone individual headsets, so you could just go find a place to sit down. Granted, most of the time it was on the floor, but at least it was a more quiet place, and you could sit down, do whatever you need to do, and watch the keynote. So that was always a nice compromise for me, was doing that and getting, therefore I'm already in the location I need to be for right after for whatever session or workshop or anything else along those lines I was doing. So one of the other things I always do when I go to Vegas is I always stop at one of the two ends of the strip. I think there's a Walgreens and a CVS when I get there, just to get some water and some Gatorade and things along those lines. Granted, there's stuff all around, but when you wake up in the morning in the dry desert with the AC on, I'm always massively dehydrated. So just having those couple of things or some snack food or something like that you can just throw in, or grab something for breakfast and just have in your hotel room, saves you so much time and headache and money, because you can just grab it at the overpriced CVS or Walgreens that are on the strip.
And in addition to that, like lip balm, Vaseline, something like that is I've had chapped lips every year I've been to Vegas for Reinvent, so.
Yeah, one of our good friends always loses his voice at Reinvent, and so he's by day 2 he's drinking tea and honey all week long just to keep his voice somewhat functional just from the dry air. Well, good. Thanks for those tips, Matt. We appreciate it. Next week, like I said, we'll talk about some other things to help you on your Reinvent journey. Moving on to Google. Google has released its Skaffold tool for automating Kubernetes, now generally available. Skaffold is an open source tool that makes it easier for developers to work with Kubernetes. The launch is a culmination of a 20-month beta test that the software went through, including 40 iterations and open source contributions submitted from over 5,000 pieces of code to the project. Kubernetes has become a staple for enterprises, of course, and container environments become the standard. The software automates many of the tasks involved in setting up and managing clusters, but making changes to a deployment is less straightforward, and engineers have to rejigger their configuration files and perform other time-consuming adjustments every time they wish to roll out an update. The Skaffold service makes it eases this burden by analyzing the code on a developer's machine, figures out what adjustments will be made to the Kubernetes environment, and then deploys the update automatically for you. Skaffold also simplifies other dev needs like tail logs for your deployed workloads and port forwards for remote applications to your machine, so you can iterate directly against your service endpoints. So again, if you are using Kubernetes in development environments or on your laptop, Skaffold can definitely make things much easier for you.
Yeah, and even the developers trying to keep up, even though they know their code, or in theory know their code inside out, making sure that everything is configured right going into the Kubernetes cluster just becomes a large nightmare. The amount of times I've seen people be like, well, it worked in dev, and somebody hasn't updated their file for the dev account, dev YAML to the prod YAML, or JSON, it just always becomes a little bit painful. So hopefully this will help smooth that process over and will help the adoption of Kubernetes.
That is the most common dev thing I've ever heard. It worked in dev. Yes, this is definitely a great option. Google is now also opening the door to more development tools for Cloud Spanner. This is a new JDBC native driver for GCP. This allows you to connect directly to Cloud Spanner with all of your Google tools. The one in the blog post example is DB Beaver, a popular open source graphical database development tool, and the JDBC would support any database modeling tool that you might use. So if you're struggling with using Cloud Spanner on Google and you like to use your tools like Toad or other things that support JDBC, this might be a great option for you to check out.
That's not really my thing. I was kind of excited when they announced Cloud Spanner, but then it sort of died out a little bit when it wasn't rolled out to as many regions as would have seemed sensible. But
you mean you were upset that they announced a multi-region aware database and then only made it available in the East region?
Yeah, pretty much.
I think they fixed that problem now, though. You can actually deploy Cloud Spanner in multiple regions, but it definitely has a very big promise, and I'm not sure that it has quite lived up to its promise yet. All right, moving on to Azure. So coming a week too late to save my predictions for Ignite, Azure has released 10 user experience updates to helpfully improve the Azure portal. Those include things like improved portal experience, increased focus and clarity to bring services and instances that are relevant to you front and center, new service cards, enhanced service browsing experience to help you find these things easier, integration into Microsoft Learning Platform to allow you to get to free training for any of the features in the Azure portal, improved instance browsing experience, including the ability to filter different types of service capabilities, sorting, grouping, and allowing you to export these resources to a CSV file, improved Azure resource graph experience, automatic refresh in the Azure dashboard, and improved service icons, as well as many other features, including a new landing page for the Azure mobile app, adding that for your capabilities. So if this had been announced on main stage, I would have won the Ignite draft, but it was not, and it is only a blog post after the event. So there you go. Too small of an update to make a main stage.
I'll give you half a point.
Thanks, Jonathan. I appreciate that. The Azure portal's still garbage. So
I really don't like to use the web portal for anything other than just, I guess, dashboards, things like that make sense on the web, but Terraform all the way for deploying infrastructure.
Yeah, but sometimes, when things don't work, you got to look at it, at least be able to see. So to me, I use the console mainly as a read-only.
Yeah.
To the point when I now have customers ask me to do stuff, and I'm like, let me just go do the Terraform, because I can actually write the Terraform faster than I can figure out how to do it in the console, because I use the console so little in life.
I definitely, especially the Azure console, the Terraform is the way to go. It makes your life much simpler. But there are some things you still have to use the console for occasionally. And so when you do need it, it's nice that it gets a little simpler to use. What's new with the Azure Monitor is the other blog post that Azure posted this week. Azure Monitor had received several updates like Ignite that we didn't cover in our recap show. So you can now monitor containers anywhere, be it AKS, Azure Stack, and upcoming Azure Arc services. The Azure Monitor can also now scrape Prometheus data to build this into a single pane of glass. The new Network Insights preview in Azure Monitor provides a single dashboard that gives you visibility into the entire network topology and latency of creating your endpoints. And you can work better and collaborate with workbooks in your Azure Monitor service to visualize the data, so you can all look at the workbook and see the different code you're running for that. As well as there's a new agent and additions for profiling and tracing app capabilities into App Insights. So overall, Azure Monitor seems to be getting a lot of really good features, very APM-y in several of them, but definitely good to see major improvements to the Azure monitoring stack to compete with Stackdriver and CloudWatch.
It feels like all the cloud providers are trying to really get into that space of trying to get more and then share that information out, whether it's with Kubernetes and, every vendor's implementation of it, or just in general, like, here's your cross-region, or, they're trying to improve it so that it becomes a real tool for people to leverage versus like, oh, it's a secondary thought process. So I feel like it's becoming more of a first world user in these environments.
Moving on to the lightning round. Jonathan, do you want to lead lightning round today since Peter is not here?
I can do that for sure. Matt, are you aware of the rules of the lightning round?
Think of something as snippy and funny as you can really fast, which I'm not great at, so we'll see how we go. So I'm assuming Justin's going to get the point, so just
Wow, let's just preordain that. That's great.
Yeah.
Well done.
We'll see. Maybe we need like a golfing handicap for the lightning round. The Google App Engine has been updated with more new runtimes: Node.js 12, Go 1.13, PHP 7.3, and Python 3.8.
It's nice that they're finally updating to support languages they should have supported a long time ago, including Go, that they own and manage. You think they could be more coordinated?
I just wonder why it's not an automatic thing. When's the new release? Why don't they just build it in immediately? Surely there can't be that much work going into these, especially minor point releases.
Yeah, like what are they doing under the hood that has to be so special to go from 1.2 to 1.3 of Go?
Probably nothing.
But it's a press release that you could have put out there, so...
At least it wasn't 4 press releases. One for Node.js, one for Go, one for PHP, one for Python. So, you're getting somewhere.
Amazon EC2 now supports Microsoft SQL Server 2019.
I mean, it's just the fact that you can run SQL Server on an EC2 instance. It supported it without them announcing it was supported. This just means that you can now have it build automatically through your account versus bringing your own license. But, great. It's a feature, I guess.
Amazon RDS for Postgres supports customer-initiated snapshot upgrades.
Hey, did we just talk about this?
I think so, unless you're using the preview environment, which does not. Introducing the AWS Step Functions Data Science SDK for Amazon SageMaker.
This is actually really cool, because step functions are awesome, and now coupling that with SageMaker to be able to instrument your entire end-to-end, it's pretty sweet.
Yep. Download the Hello World notebook from GitHub. AWS App Mesh now supports HTTP2 and gRPC services.
Talk about a very low bar of entry to be able to support something in the App Mesh.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that some of these things were not included already.
That is the history of the lightning round, my friend.
Yep.
We're always shocked at some of the features. Like, that wasn't just part of it already?
Yeah, that's kind of when I read this one. I was like, I thought that was already in there. Okay, cool.
Amazon RDS for Oracle now supports Oracle Database 19c.
That's why they're one of Oracle's biggest customers. Or partners, if you will.
Not a customer anymore.
No, they are still a customer. That is a myth. Because they say in their blog post that they have third-party applications that still require Oracle, and those have not been moved off Oracle. So they are still a customer, but as Oracle tells you, they are one of their biggest partners because of the RDS work that they do.
I'm so glad they just called it Oracle 19c instead of the full version number, which was 19.0.0.0.2019-RU-2019-IUR-2019-07.R1.
Yeah, I don't actually understand Oracle database numbering, because my very first Oracle database experience was Oracle 8i, which came after Oracle 8, and then there was Oracle 9i, and then I think Oracle 10 actually wasn't a database. I think it was Oracle. That was actually Oracle Financial. Their convention of naming is a little bit weird, so don't understand it at all. And I'm pretty sure there hasn't been another 9 years since I did Oracle 8i. I think it's more like 20 years since I did Oracle 8i. So yeah, I don't get it.
Maybe it's 19 because it's 2019.
Oh, let's see. There you go. That's a good guess, but
maybe not. Who knows what goes through the mind of Larry Ellison. Introducing notifications for AWS Code Commit, AWS Code Build, Code Deploy, and Code Pipeline.
I mean, just thank goodness that they decided to do this as one press release versus the next 5 weeks they release this for each of these services. Thank you, Amazon. I really appreciate it.
Coming next week, US East 1, US East 2, US West 1.
Just like now you get to get notifications on every single success, because some developer is going to set it up to email the team every single time it's successful on building a package.
AWS Code Build adds support for AWS Secrets Manager. Duh.
Talk about a thing that you'd want to have. Like, that seems obvious because you want to be able to communicate with, Amazon code repos or Artifactory or GitHub or all these things that would potentially need a secret. So thanks for that obvious feature.
We should have a separate section for brought to you from the Department of Things we already thought existed.
That's why we should just rename the lightning round.
Keep AWS Systems Manager agents automatically updated with a single click.
I mean, I'm so glad they found Windows Update for systems.
I want zero-click updates. Why can't it just update itself? Amazon Elastic File System Infrequent Access now supports a 7-day lifecycle management policy.
If you're using EFS for a file that is only required for 7 days, and then can go to infrequent access, I'm going to start saying you should probably reorganize that to be S3 based.
I'll let you know when I can afford to use the service. Use the AWS CLI v2 preview with AWS Single Sign-On to increase developer productivity.
Considering how much they push you to use MFA and Single Sign-On these days, you think that should be a launch day feature?
So thousands of customers can now delete their shoddy tools that they had to build to work around this and start using native functionality. It's great.
Have you tried the CLI v2 preview yet, either of you?
No, I haven't. I use enough other tools for every other way to log in that, I just at this point have script alias on my laptop to just figure out whatever customer it is and then log into their account through the CLI. And then I just use profiles for everything, which is essentially what they're trying to get people to here.
Yeah, I'm glad to see this, but that is also reworking of the entire CLI. In addition to this, is just one feature of it, but the whole CLI v2 is a reworking of the entire CLI organizational structure. So it's going to be a big change when it rolls. I assume it'll be, not detrimental to the existing CLI, but it'll become the new standard. I've not used it yet either. But
NoSQL Workbench for Amazon DynamoDB adds support for DynamoDB local.
I mean, it's just a JDBC endpoint that's now localhost versus Amazon, right? Like, really?
Yep.
Still going back to, I assume that would be a day one feature. If you're going to support it there and you're pushing people to develop locally, why is your Workbench not able to access a local host?
It may be a lack of support for some of the APIs that were needed locally versus the real DynamoDB. I don't know. I assume they don't really want to ship a full DynamoDB compatible binary to people. Just the bare minimum.
Doesn't it mostly just? I think it's mostly mocks, or if it does store, it doesn't store a lot of data.
It doesn't persist it to disk.
Right. Yeah.
But it's really good for testing. Amazon Redshift now supports changing table sort keys dynamically.
Basic database capabilities.
Yeah, having to recreate a table just to change the sort key is a bit painful. Well, I'm going to have a hard time picking a winner this time. I'm not sure that anybody really wowed me with anything.
I vote the guests take it then. We're behind. I think you guys even stopped counting how little the guest points get, so...
I could give it to the guest, or maybe I'll give it to Larry Ellison for naming the Oracle version number, like 32 or 40 characters long.
That's it for this week here on the Cloud Pod. Matt, if they want to follow you on Twitter or on the interwebs in some way, what is your recommended path for them to reach out to you and say hello, or learn more about Foghorn on the East Coast, as you are the practice lead for that side?
Yeah, if you want to reach out to me, you can either shoot me an email or hit me up on LinkedIn. I don't really use Twitter that much. Otherwise, if you want to reach out, I'm Matt at Foghorn Consulting at my work, and that's always nice and easy way to get a hold of me.
Excellent. Thanks for coming.
Anytime.
Well, we look forward to seeing you, Matt, in person at Reinvent, as well as the rest of the Foghorn team and all of our listeners. We will see you next week on the Cloud Pod. And that is the Week in Cloud. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Foghorn Consulting. Subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and tweet us your feedback at #TheCloudPod. Or join our Slack channel, go to our website, thecloudpod.net for sign-up instructions.